Hello, everyone. Welcome to Slow Art Friday. Today is July the 24th. My name is Christy McMillan. I'm the Director of Learning and Engagement here at the Asheville Art Museum. And I'm joined today by Michelle Weitzman Dorf, one of the museum's touring docents. Each Friday at 12 p.m. while the museum is closed, docents lead virtual, interactive conversations about a few artworks in our collection or special exhibitions. The goal is simple: slow down, discover the joy of looking at art, and talk about the experience with others. For today's program, Michelle will lead us in an interactive conversation about 3 artworks in our collection. We'll spend about 15 minutes or so with each artwork. Michelle will allow us time to look at each work on our own, slowly, before leading a conversation about each one with questions. As participants, we encourage you to engage in dialogue with Michelle, myself, and each other throughout the hour. Just a few notes before we get started. You probably noticed that your microphones and video were muted by default. I will here very shortly make it so that folks can unmute their microphones. And if any time during the program you would like to unmute your video, we definitely encourage you to do so that we can pretend that we're here in the galleries together. Choose a quiet room and close the door. Please do silence any alerts from nearby devices. All of those dings can be very distracting while we're having our conversation. If you do choose to unmute your video, please try not to sit in front of a window, lamp, or other strong light source, as it does affect our ability to be able to see you. Use headphones and a microphone for best sound quality. While you can log in using a smartphone, it is a better experience if you use a desktop, laptop, or tablet in order to see slides and meeting tools on a larger screen. Make sure that your screen name includes your first name and last initial, or your first name and last name, so that as we're having our conversation today, we can talk to each other by name. Throughout the program, in order to ask questions or to make comments, you will be able to unmute your microphone when Michelle or I ask for questions or comments. You're also welcome to type into the chat box, and we can take those questions sort of as time allows. The third way to ask questions or make comments during the program is to raise your hand in the participant sidebar, and either Michelle or I will call on you and unmute your microphone. Finally, we are recording, so if you prefer not to be recorded, please make sure that your video and audio remain muted and use the chat box to submit any questions or comments. So I am going to now make it so that people can unmute themselves. Again, if you're not actively asking a question or making a comment, please do leave your microphone muted in order to minimize any distracting noises. Before we get started, does anybody have any questions? Fantastic. Michelle, what will we be talking about today?
Okay, we are talking about some artists from Black Mountain College. And I'll just begin by saying that it was really fun to do the research on these 3 artists and who they are and what their contributions were to the art world. I also want to make a comment that I think it's really hilarious that Christy and I are using the same background virtual picture, but they're in reverse. So I chose this originally because I wanted us to feel like we were actually in the museum. And I don't know if you all have had a chance to visit the museum. This is the where we have the collection that we own and rotate. So welcome again, Slow Art Friday, and let's begin with looking at our first artwork from Gustav Falk. Take a few moments to look at this, and then we will start the conversation and see what we see in this artwork. And this is a color pencil on paper. It's 8 1/4 by 11 3/4 inches. And this particular artwork is not dated.
Actually, Michelle, I found out that it does have a date, so your
Ah,
slide is updated. Cindy just did that research and gave us a date this week.
very cool. When is it?
Um, Circa
Ah,
1967.
1967. I'll adjust my notes. Okay, so what are we looking at here? What's going on in this artwork, in this colored pencil on paper?
There's obviously something with the colors that stand out for the inner ear, but my eyes are drawn towards her eyes. They're almost like Mona Lisa eyes to me. They kind of stand out.
Nice. So you're noticing the color, but you're also really drawn to the eyes because they stand out. Cool.
My very first impression of it was that there was a butterfly or a bug or something when I first looked at it real quickly before I saw that it looks like maybe her inner ear. But my first impression was that it was an insect.
Okay. So looks like an insect, but you also notice that it looks like her inner ear.
I believe he's professionally a medical illustrator. And so I looked at it.
Billy? It is Billy. Yes, actually, that is part of his background. He did become a medical illustrator after he was exploring some other things.
What's interesting for me is that even though intellectually I see it as the inner workings of an ear, my first impression was that it was brain activity, because I'm much more accustomed to seeing that kind of inset showing brain waves and brain patterns and the activity of a brain. And it's only, I have to switch my thinking into the reality of what it is I'm looking at.
Okay.
I don't know if it's accurate or not, but when I was just going to add on, when I looked at it, I saw a butterfly and a hummingbird and some really beautiful beings on this child's face. So I could not find out how accurate it is as a medical illustration, but I'll bet it's close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with Billy, because when I looked at it from further away, I thought it was a hummingbird, a more summer type insects, and I had to look close up to realize, oh, it was the inner workings of the ear. But part of what I'm also seeing too, that as much as there is the color variation concentrated in that ear itself, that I'm noticing the details, the minute details throughout the entire picture itself, and even down to the wisps of her hair, that even though the color is drawing us there, there is also that distinction of her forehead, her eyes, her eyebrows. Everything is still done in such a way that you can still see that distinctly.
Another aspect that I find actually a little bit eerie is that it either can look like a headband that's going around her head, or it can look like her skull is sliced, and this is coming from like a slit in her skin, or that front part is underneath the scalp, so it's a little unnerving.
Yeah, it's almost like part of her brain is exposed.
Yeah, that's what I was seeing too.
I actually see more of a fish in the outline of that image. I'm also struck by the word papa
Yeah.
on it. Yep.
I noticed that too, the word papa under the hair. And I think the shading, because it's all monochromatic, the one color except for the ear, but you see the detail on her mouth, her nose, her chin, the hair, and also the wording. I see a headband and hair. I don't see necessarily a cut or a skull, but definitely a lot of detail in the face there.
Who said Mona Lisa? Somebody said, you know, she has that very captivating smile and her
Someone
gaze.
said Mona Lisa eyes.
I did. I said that, Laurel. Yeah.
I was also looking at that headband or brain, but it looked almost like her head was shaved. And now that you said this guy is a medical illustrator, maybe she had some kind of operation to hear, and that's why the word papa is there, because she's hearing the word papa. I don't know, just a thought.
Okay, so a lot of conversation about the detail in this particular colored image. And it's interesting, you know, everything that you're pointing out, I did not originally see a fish-like shape. And it's interesting that you are picking up on a lot of different details, and I'll give you some background on the artist because of the commentary that you made. So the fact that you found the word papa, let me just pose a question. Why do you think that word might be there when, generally speaking, in an artwork, an artist will sign their name or not sign their name? What do you think about that?
It must be his child. And so to her, he is Papa.
And why might he have done this artwork, do you think?
Over in the chat box, Michelle, I think Barbara H. had an idea. She said, I saw it as a portrait possibly of a medical professional's drawing their child who has an ear infection.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is interject some information to give you a deeper understanding to this particular color pencil on paper. And that is that he and his family were in a car accident. And unfortunately, his daughter did sustain some injuries, and specifically to her ear. And what's so interesting is that, as Billy pointed out earlier, he did become a medical illustrator. However, he wasn't one before the accident. So what's so interesting about having done the research on Gustav is that because he went to medical meetings with his wife to understand what was happening with his daughter, he translated it into illustration so that he would better understand what the doctor was saying. So I thought that that was just absolutely fascinating. He had been a portrait artist as well as other things, and then he, because of this unfortunate accident, he did become a medical illustrator and was very well known for that. And prior to that, he actually did illustrations, fashion illustration, and artwork for, I can't remember right now, but a very famous makeup company in New York. So I just thought I would give you that background because you've all picked up on the ear, the brain, the detail in his work, and I thought you might enjoy having some of that background. Any other commentary on this particular artwork?
I think the color on the framing is also very interesting. The pinkish color that offsets the monochromatic of the girl's face and everything.
I think it's interesting that the word papa Like if that's a signature, that's not a typical place you see an artist sign a work. It's almost like he's trying to draw your attention to the ear as a focal point.
I chose this piece because of the coloring of it. It really attracted me. And I happen to be a purple lover, so it really stood out for me.
Micah Jean made an interesting comment in the chat. She said that he transformed the injury into something beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. And let's see, I had one other comment. Let's see. No, that's it. Okay, any other last comments before we move on to our next work?
Michelle, what is the medium? Is it pencil?
It is. It's color pencil on paper.
Okay.
And Michelle, when was Gustav Falk at BMC, or what was his affiliation with Black Mountain College?
So he actually was, let's see, he studied actually with Willem de Kooning and Joseph Albers from his friendship with de Kooning. Wait, hold on a second. That's not completely correct. Let's see. He attended classes in 1947 at the Museum of Modern Art, and he studied with Willem de Kooning and Joseph Albers after that. And he was there in, I believe, yeah, in 1947. And then from New York, he had moved to Paris, where he was doing the fashion illustration. He actually went to go visit his mother's brother and ended up having a 23-year vacation in France and having his career in fashion illustration and then medical illustration. And he got invited back to New York, where he continued the medical illustration. And he was actually invited back to France to teach, and that's where he passed in 2011 on Valentine's Day.
Laurel has a comment in the chat, Michelle. She said, it's interesting that we only see one ear. Laurel, do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yes, I think it's obviously a portrait, and it's almost full face, and her face is slightly turned, and she doesn't have another ear. Just the one ear is very dramatic, and obviously knowing she had an injury, but you only see one ear.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Christy, if you will, please put up the next slide. Okay, once again, let's just take a look at this. You might consider looking at it from top to bottom, left to right. And we will talk about this charcoal on paper by Elaine De Kooning in just a moment. This artwork is 29.5 by 20.5 inches. And it's from 1976. It is charcoal on paper. So what's going on in this artwork? What is this guy? Who is this guy? What's he doing? What's he thinking?
Well, he looks like an artist to me because of the way the scarf is and his rather intense intellectual, non-social in a way, stare or a look. He may have something in his right hand, and he's a very strong personality.
What do you see that has you say that he has a strong personality?
His intense expression and his he's got a very strong, secure stance.
Posture.
He's not a posture. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
He looks to me like someone just getting ready to get on an elevator in an office building. Maybe I spent too many years getting on elevators in office buildings. But you know, his surroundings, if that's furniture behind him, whatever it is very abstracted. And it's almost as if someone called his name and he turned around and paused.
And I think you're right about that he is like caught in just a hurry up, what do you want kind of attitude to me. He's not happy about being caught. And if he is, and Elaine said, hey, wait, let me sketch you. He's thinking, get it over with.
So you're seeing that he's like stopped in motion all of a sudden, and oh, you're looking to catch my appearance, and I'm on my way somewhere, and I have other things to do. And then, but Billy thinks that he's waiting for an elevator.
Well, he's got the chair behind him, and then the lounge furniture on the left. So, I don't know what he's doing. Probably critiquing the person who's drunk.
So you're seeing on the left lounge furniture, and that it's very abstract in the background, so you can't really tell what the background is, but there's a lot of focus on him, his attitude. He looks artistic. Perhaps he's holding something in his right hand. Very strong personality.
Yeah, his hair is all disheveled, as someone in the chat room mentioned, but also just picking up on what was previously said, it looks like the artist got the most amount of time doing the face, and maybe that was the expression, and maybe it was, his imperative, hurry up, I'm not going to be here very long. But it looks as though the face the artist spent the most time on, and then the rest of it was quicker. There's a real sense of movement, I think, in much of the artwork, with the background coming in then.
I definitely also get the sense of being disheveled, just the way the hair is and the pants, but he's obviously dressed and has shoes and a scarf, and it is kind of vague and abstract to discern what the background objects can be.
There's definitely the aspects of him looking disheveled, with the hair and pants, but then there's an aspect to me that he looks sort of debonair as well. So got that scarf around his neck, and he is dressed in a suit, and sort of looks like a dark shirt and maybe a white tie. So there are aspects that sort of look debonair.
I agree that he's got style. I don't know whether I would personally call it debonair. He's definitely, from my point of view, anyone who kind of has that costume of, yes, I'm stylish and I'm going to wear this scarf thrown, around my neck, and it's just, there are some people who like to show off their style, and he seems like someone, yes, I'm going to grow my hair long. That's a statement. The scarf is a statement. The stance is a statement. And he has a slight arrogance to him, to me.
if I may say, I think you're right on target. And there's an interesting article about her online about why she sacrificed her own artistic career for her husband, which wasn't unusual, or still isn't today, I guess. And she's quoted as saying in her portraiture work that each person has a style. And each person has a pose. And that pose defines them. And that speaks to this perfectly, to me.
Well, he definitely has a lot of attitude, and it's interesting all the things that you've pointed out about his almost opposition, where he's looking well dressed and at the same time disheveled.
But I found that interesting that she said each person has a pose, and if you think about that, there's a lot of validity to that, particularly if you're a portrait painter.
I agree with Karen that it looks like he's kind of affected, like the way he put on his scarf and the disheveled hair in contrast to the suit. It's kind of like, this is my style. I'm going to be like either the mad professor or the artistic person. It seems like, he's posing.
I've met a lot of people like him.
I'm sure you have.
Years of hanging out with artists and hanging out with university artists, and this is someone who can get away with having long hair, so he doesn't need to fit in. And I actually don't think it's a suit. I think it's a sports jacket, white shirt, open. I don't see a tie there at all. This is his look. This is his uniform.
Isn't it interesting that it's almost kind of unfinished in some places? It's very detailed in others, but very, like his right shoe is just almost completely just the outline.
I agree with the person who was saying that they look like artists that they knew. I was just going to write it in the chat box. Looks like a whole bunch of art professors that were at my undergraduate school. My first husband was an art major. And I mean, this is just a portrait of one of his instructors.
So we have a lot of people talking about him in an artistic sense, and that he has a certain stance and command of who he is as a person. And again, the quick strokes of charcoal. Elaine De Kooning was known for doing very, very quick work. And so this, so your commentary about, her focusing on certain details and not on others makes a lot of sense for how she was known as an artist.
We talked a lot about him because he's so strong and he makes such an impression. But if you do look around at the composition and what the artist did, I think that the use of the square, the rectangle behind him, the door opening or whatever that is, echoes his strength and is also a key element in the composition.
And what type of room do you think that he's in? What impression do you have with where he is? Because I see something that I'm not going to mention yet, but I'm interested to hear what you think where he is, what kind of room he's in.
My husband insists that he's in the bathroom and that's a toilet behind him.
I see the toilet too. It's why I mentioned it.
Yeah. I kept finding it had to be something else.
I know. It didn't make sense to me either, but it's just so outlined. I mean, even as far as the back rectangle could look like a toilet tank. So I saw what your husband saw, Billy. Anyone else? What do you think this room is?
That as a toilet for the first nanosecond, and then it's a French bistro chair pretty clearly when you look at the.
Oh yeah.
Oh, good
Okay.
one.
Very good.
So I see it as either in a gallery space or it pretty much looks like a gallery space to me. It could be a studio, but I don't think so. If you look over his right shoulder, it's possible that that is a piece of an artwork that you're seeing within that rectangle.
Or a table? Yeah.
Right.
I think it,
Above his right shoulder, within that rectangle, it looks like it's possibly a piece of an artwork that's you're seeing behind him. I don't know.
that looks like a faculty lounge with a cabinet in the back, a chair. I don't think that's a toilet. And he looks like an art professor to me.
Yeah, so the more that you talk about the chair, it's like definitely representative of a chair, but the initial seeing of that, it's interesting. Very possible that it's an art studio. He was actually an artist as well.
Yeah, several people have commented in the chat that those rectangles in the background remind them of, you know, an artist studio with paintings sort of leaning against the wall or things in frames.
So the subject of this, his name was Aristodemos Caldis. And he actually was an artist and a left-wing activist in New York. And he used to lecture with Willem De Kooning and became very good friends with De Kooning and Elaine, of course, and was definitely big in the art scene of the 50s. He was part of the club, as they were known, the so-called the New York School Artists. And it included the De Koonings, also Gorky, Klein, Adolf Gottlieb, and a lot of others who he had known and socialized with for a long time. So what struck me about him is I wonder if he had a nickname and what his friends called him with you know, this type of name. So and I was looking for that information and I didn't find that.
I'm going to say they call him Demos.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Okay. It's as good a guess as any. He definitely did have a really huge personality and was very, very vocal. So all of the characteristics that you picked up on this gentleman were definitely accurate for who he was. Artistic, attitude, you know, definitely knew who he was, stood his own ground. And I am not familiar with that particular article that I didn't come across the article that you're referring to, Billy. And what I did find in my research was that Elaine De Kooning was actually very happily influenced by Willem De Kooning and found his assistance as something that empowered her work. And she was a trailblazer in that she loved men. She just really loved engaging with men, and she decided to do portraits of men because she just loved the relationships that she had with them. And she was kind of like, from what I read, kind of like one of the guys. Like she could drink with the guys, and she was very well respected in that circle. The thing that I found out about her that I didn't know, but my knowledge is limited, is that she is really famous for a portrait that she did of John F. Kennedy. And she was actually commissioned for a JFK portrait for the Truman Library. And what she said, what's interesting about this particular artwork is that she actually liked to do portraits of people with distinguished characteristics in their faces, and then she would blur out the faces. And she really got, what Billy was referring to earlier was people are their stance. And that was a big portion of her work, was that. So everything all the comments that you made absolutely spoke to who she was as an artist and what she was looking to capture. And she was well known for doing her art very quickly. In fact, when she did do the John F. Kennedy piece, they chose her knowing about her style because he was not someone who sat still for very long. So they were happy to commission her for that. And she really enjoyed that commission.
So just a quick note, Elaine De Kooning came to Black Mountain College with Willem De Kooning when he was teaching there one summer, and she took advantage of the time in North Carolina to take classes at BMC. So that's her connection to the college. And I also learned when we read the book Ninth Street Women for last year's September book selection for our book group, that she did Caldis's portrait many times over the years. It was somebody that she came back to again and again as a portrait sitter. Susan C. in the chat pointed out that he was born in 1899, so in 1976 when this sketch was made, he would have been 77 years old, and she thinks that he looks pretty great for a 77-year-old in 1976.
Great, thank you for adding that in, Christy. And we're ready for our next artwork. And this is Barbara Morgan. And this is a gelatin silver print on paper. It's 9 3/8 by 7 3/4 inches. And it was, well, I'll let you take a look at it first and then we'll discuss it some more. So what's going on in this particular picture? Obviously it's a dancer, but what do you see? What kind of emotion do you feel from seeing this picture?
Well, I see someone almost in flight. I see wind because that's what would be necessary for that kind of kite-like sail.
It looks like part of a dance ritual, but it almost looks the way her eyes are looking upward, at the intense face, like a sense of longing for something.
Or a sense of surprise, you know, of unknown, maybe.
So we're seeing flight. Joey also mentioned that he saw flight. And we're seeing longing and possible part of a ritual. The picture is catching a dance and a ritual dance.
She looks like she has to be strong. I mean, to hold your arms up in the air, holding on to that type of device, even though it doesn't look that heavy, and to have her leg in that position and her body balanced on the other leg that's hidden, she has to be practiced and strong.
A strong and practiced dancer. Good. Anyone else?
Yeah, you mentioned
Looks
balance.
like there's, okay, sorry.
You mentioned balance, and I thought I really got the impression of balance with the leg and the arms outstretched. You do have to be strong. So balance was a word I thought of when I looked at this picture.
And Billy, you were going to say?
Oh, there's a freedom. Even though she's encircled, there's a freedom about her movement that someone said flying, that she could maybe levitate at any moment. And let me say one other thing, and that is the way that the photograph, the horizontal line of the wall and the floor, enhanced that to my eye.
Right.
Are we talking about who this is a photograph of yet?
We're not, but you can mention it if you'd like.
Okay. Well, it's Martha Graham. And so, you know, she is the patroness, she is the mother of modern dance, of course, as everybody knows. But this is one of the most wonderful pictures, I think, that was ever made of her.
And what has you say that? Because there are so many of pictures of her, specifically that Barbara Morgan took.
And a lot of them focus on her garment or this. I am captured by her face. This has more of her face than many of the other photographs, and it also illustrates. If you look at her foot, that was relatively new in the dance world at that time. Martha Graham really brought that kind of angular motion into dance popularity and acceptance. So, but you see her face.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Having seen a lot of different photographs and doing the research, thank you for pointing that out.
What I find interesting is yes, her athletic ability to be able to hold that, but I want to also think that it was spontaneously captured because of the movement of whatever that arc is. It's sort of like a veiled kite, whatever you would call that. But it made me wonder if she were holding still and if there was a wind source for that, because otherwise she would have to have been in motion, clearly at least picking up her arms once she's standing there. So I just became intrigued with the mechanics of capturing that shot.
Yes.
I was also noticing, while her face is more clear, a lot of the other wardrobe that she wore seemed much more modern. This seems almost period, kind of makes me think of like Rites of Spring with the fitted bodice, where her other photographs had much more flowing or interesting kinds of garment. And like someone said that the garments were the focus, not her face. And this seems like a more traditional dance outfit of, you know, it just reminds me of something like from the 30s or 40s. I don't know the time frame of the picture.
This particular one was 1940. And however, yeah, it was 1940.
I think that the dance movement is more graceful than most of the Martha Graham dance movements. everything, most of her things were very angular, not flowing.
Right, so you're seeing a softness to this, other than the more angular modern dance. This seems more traditional, flowing.
And don't you think that she actually was dancing and the camera was just running? It was a series of photographs and she was able to just capture this moment rather than an actual pose.
So this looks to you like she's actually, she was taking pictures as this person was dancing, as opposed to it being a posed shot. Okay.
Susan O in the comments had also made a comment that that there was not a blur in the photograph. Susan, did you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Well, to me, it's clear she's moving forward. And talking about balance, it's like if she doesn't continue to move forward, she wouldn't have her balance. You can see the fabric flying out behind her, yet you would think if she was moving that there would be a blur. And I know that they were trying to capture different dances to actually document them. And so I do wonder if it's a pose, if it's a planned part of the documentation.
Hi, this is Micah. I would say that it's a pose. There seems to be a rod in the material that's giving her the ability to lift it upward. And I guess it would be her, yeah, there you go. I guess it would be her left hand. There is some blurring going on in that area, but I think it's a pose. I don't think she's in actual motion.
I also think the fact that it's black and white makes it very dramatic, as opposed to if the picture was in color.
And I thought about that as well. How do you think, what effect would it have on you if this picture was in color? How would you feel differently about this?
I don't think it would have the same sense of the power, the face, the intensity, the just drama of the picture itself.
Right. So if it were color, you feel it would be less intense. Yeah.
So do you think that a fan was used, or what was used to create the movement of the gauze that's on the hoop?
Well, there's a couple of possibilities. If it were a pose, then it could possibly be some wind movement from some source, a fan, whatever. If it's actual movement and dance and she's being caught dancing, it could just be the inertia of her dancing.
Right. That's what I think that it would. And I'm looking at because I'm kind of captivated by the angles of the fabric and how you know, if you're looking at a painting, you say, well, what's the source of the light? What's the source of the air? If it were a pose that created that burst of textile movement.
And what is it in the angles of the fabric that has you say that, Billy?
Well, on the right-hand side, as I'm looking at you see the angle of the fabric coming straight out, and it's actually draped back behind her on the other side. And that's what led me to believe that she was actually moving, and I don't need to do this. She was moving, and movement of her body in the hoop was what caused that, rather than having it be something posed where the fabric would have to have a fan or something like that.
It could have been a combination of both. Her lower body and her leg imbalance could have been pre-done, and then as the photographer's getting ready to take the picture, she moves her arms up and causes the waving of the hoop effect.
That's an interesting thought. I don't actually know how this was, I don't have the background on how this particular one was captured.
It doesn't look static to me. It looks like there's motion. It doesn't look like she's standing still to me.
Yeah. Well, having seen a lot of other photographs of hers in doing the research once again, one of the facts about her is that she is one of the developers of Aperture magazine. So she I believe, did a lot of experimentation with photography so that she could clearly capture dancers in motion. She was fascinated by modern dance, and she actually went in 1935 to a performance of Martha Graham and was just really taken by the art form and became really good friends with Martha Graham, which is the reason why she did many, book on her and many photographs on her, but also a lot of the other modern dancers of the time. So I think it was her intention to catch dancers in motion with a clarity that hadn't been able to be captured before.
Well, and Martha Graham's work was so dramatic. And I just felt, as I looked at this, the drama of Martha Graham is just captured beautifully in this photograph.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in particular, I think the left leg that's kicking out in the back, because if you look at it, it's not a balletic pose. The left leg is slightly turned in almost with the flexed foot also. So it definitely, is her mark on dance.
Yeah, certainly.
If you compare it to the pose or the posture that you see here, and compare it to the last work that we looked at of the art professor, and think about the statement that each person has a pose, I mean, this really confirms that to me.
And I'll pose this question. So in this particular pose of Martha Graham as a dancer, what does this pose say to you, to y'all?
To me, it says strength and flexibility. The strength in her leg holding up everything else, but the flexibility of her being able to lift up that left leg towards the back and still balance with her arms held up. So to me, it's just that two things of strength and flexibility.
Excellent. Anyone else?
Perhaps whimsy or yearning or romanticism or artistry. I don't know what you'd want to call it, but it's that facial expression and the open arms as well. Strength, flexibility, and there's something else in there, I think. And it's related to her facial movement and her arms.
In the chat box, sorry. Go ahead, Kathy.
Not her facial movement, obviously, her facial expression. Yeah.
In the chat box, Michelle, a lot of people are using the word freedom or escape. which to me, in this sense, seem kind of synonymous.
Yeah, and I agree with Micah's comment also, a longing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because
Say again, go ahead.
there's a freedom there, but she is bound to holding on to that arc above her with the veil. That's what I was trying to think of, with that veil. And so it's not complete freedom because she isn't letting go of that veil. Maybe it's seeking freedom.
Perhaps. Well, it is from a particular dance, and it was based. You know what? I forgive me. I can't remember the whole story, but it's definitely a ritualistic dance, and so the costuming and the accessory of the hooped veil definitely have meaning behind it. So all of the expressions that you're noting were part of that ritualistic dance of this particular artwork. So Barbara Morgan and her relationship to Black Mountain College is that she was actually, it was requested of her to send photographs to Black Mountain at the request of Joseph Albers, and specifically for an exhibition at Black Mountain College. And the following year, during their Art Summer Institute, she attended Black Mountain College and took photographs of what was going on there. You know, not only dance, but also I'm assuming the performances, because they did a lot of performance work there as well. And a couple of the things that struck me about her is that she was really interested in the role of light in photography. And she asserted that she was not only a photographer or a painter, because she actually painted before she started taking photographs. And she said, I'm not just a photographer or a painter, but a visually aware human being searching out ways to communicate the intensities of life. And for certain, Martha Graham had intensity in modern dance, and that was of a lot of interest to Barbara Morgan. And one other thing that really captured me about Barbara is something that she, here we go, something that while she was a student, she read from something called the Chinese Six Canons of Painting about rhythmic vitality, or the essence of life force, described as the artist's goal of expression. And she says that this concept related directly to her father's teaching that all things are made of dancing atoms, and remained a guiding philosophy throughout her life as an artist, as we can see from this photograph. And if you'd like to venture onto the internet, her talent of how she captures people in motion, it's as if you can feel the passion that she has for this particular art form. And wow, it's 1 o'clock, everybody. So,
it always comes so quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah. I thought I had a couple minutes, but here it is 1 o'clock. So thank you so much for engaging in this really great conversation today.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's always a pleasure to see everyone and to ease ourselves into the weekend with a really great slow art conversation. Thank you, Michelle, for choosing 3 works from our Black Mountain College collection. Of course, always a favorite when we choose Black Mountain College works, and these were ones actually that don't actually come out on view that much. I believe that the current one currently on the screen, Martha Graham El Penitente, is currently on view in our Barbara Morgan exhibition. I say currently. It's in the gallery, though I think I'm the only one that can see it in person. But the two that you showed previously are rarely out in the gallery because they're works on paper, but I can say that the Gustav Falk work that you see here will be on view in one of our upcoming exhibitions, so we'll get to see it in person. So that makes me really happy because I have always loved it in a digital image, and I can't wait to see it in person. So thanks for getting us excited about it, Michelle.
Yeah.
Thank all of you for coming. I hope you have a great weekend. If you're interested in joining us next week, our topic is Every Picture Tells a Story. It's artworks that have a lot of sort of questions or stories that we can put together with them, and our docent is going to be Sarah Reinke. So let me know if you'd like to attend that. I'd be happy to put you on the list for next week. In the meantime, everybody have a great weekend, and we will look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care.
Thank you.